It says Ejura mayhem report ready. Sack MCE. Punish soldier. ECOWAS speaker laws government for ICT development and now 10th education summit in UK.
All right, the new crusading guide, sweeping reforms at National Security Ministry. 3 days workshop underway to educate personnel. Chief drags Obuasi Municipal Assembly to court for diverting one district, one factory project land into community mining sites. Wow. Internet penetration in Africa is worrisome. Penyoma charges leaders to do more. And COVID-19 vaccine saga. Ajimamenu prioritized safety of Ghanaians over procedure. Group defends health minister.
Well, the last bastion of Mills in the NDC's newspaper, The Informer, its front page says Mills' unprecedented economic achievements. 10-member advisory council behind success. John Mahama not part of team.
Are you serious?
That's the front page. I'm telling you.
Wow.
That's the front page.
That is gone, man.
Ghana's economy, perspectives from NDC, government and varsity done, and towards strengthening Ghana's democracy, 3 arms of government team up, according to Alban Backburn.
The find 110 billion Ghana cedi SOEs post 586.4 million Ghana cedis losses in 2019. Okay, 10% of them return on 10% of return on assets can generate 11 billion Ghana cedis. All right, digital currency is the way to go in boosting economic growth, says Dr. Baumia. BOST is going to pay 9.9 million Ghana cedis plus 30% annual interest since 2011 to Hask Oil as judgment debt.
Wow.
Newmont to invest $850 million into approved Ahafo North project. NPP Code of Conduct spells out severe sanctions, including expulsion, and NDC expels Koku Anyudoho.
Front page of the Herald also goes with that story. Koku Anyudoho sacked from NDC for anti-party behavior. Chief Justice faces third investigative body over $5 million bribery claim. More trouble for health ministers. Minority demands audit into COVID-19 expenditure. Rosewood cartel puts lands minister's credibility on test.
The Ghanaian publisher, ADB half-year earnings up by 80%. Nana is off to UK for Education Summit. Tampoli donates tractors to Gusho farmers. MPP moves to stop indiscipline ahead of presidential primaries, and NDC sacks Samuel Koku Anyudoho.
Front page of The Republic this morning says Asin North MP hot as Supreme Court throws out its application. ADB makes strides. Earnings go up by about 80% in first half of 2021. Kufuor's Olympic Stadium abandoned as project site turns criminal haven.
The new publisher, Ifutu MP on show at ECOWAS Parliament. ECOWAS went to win it.
I tell you, he brought West Africa to win over. Too much.
And Napo fires up NPP delegates. Those are the two stories on the front page.
Front page of the BNFT finally from me, Bernard. GCX helps farmers win war against middlemen. That's a Ghana Commodities Exchange. Helps farmers win war against middlemen. Be firm on informal sector revenue collection. That's a tax analyst to the finance minister of the mid-year budget. On COVID-19, employers urged to resume shift system to curb rising cases.
CityNewsroom.com, a couple of stories. Anyudoho seeks solace in Joseph's slave to prime minister story after NDC sack. Also, Koku's sacking will make NDC members happy. This is Asiedun Ketia. In other stories, Ejura disturbances. I expect Ashanti Regional Minister to be sanctioned, not MCE. This is a security analyst. Meanwhile, presidency replies a separate petition for removal of CJ over the 5 million bribery claim. In the anti-LGBTQ bill, Samuel George says it's a national agenda to save our culture. And still on that story, we'll help fine-tune the bill. This is Pentecostal and Charismatic Council. In other stories, workers of Dombo CK Tedam University threatened strike on August 2 over payroll migration and revision of COVID-19 vaccination plan under consideration. This is according to the health minister. MyJournline.com leads with Akufo-Addo sets in motion probe to determine if CJ should be removed from office or not. Also, Attorney General updates Parliament on investigations into murder of Professor Bene, and Cape Coast High Court to rule on Asin North MP's eligibility today. Meanwhile, Gadangbe people petition Akufo-Addo. They say we're being humiliated, insulted, and deprived of our rights. And Henry Korte demands transfer of Ayawaso Central Municipal Environmental Health Officer. That's his own constituency. If you go to the Star FM website, NDC expels Koku Anyudoho. Also, Akufo-Addo leaves for Global Education Summit in the UK. And Mensa Bonsu says Akufo-Addo chartered private jet out of necessity. GNA is dealing with Koku Anyudoho still. NDC dismisses Koku Anyudoho for indiscipline. Also, majority leader advocates consensus building in Parliament. And Ghana targets 12.6 million people for onchocerciasis drug administration. Let's get into the details, guys.
All right, should we start with Ejura? The probe report
Yes.
will not spare offenders. This is the Ghanaian Times take on this. The Interior Minister, Ambrose Derry, received the report on the Ejura disturbance probe, and he assured the committee that the government, through the ministry, would study it and implement recommendations made. He said the government attaches importance to the circumstances that led to the death of 2 persons and the injury of others in the Ashanti region, and they won't spare any individual or persons found guilty. It's a 54-page report that contains the committee's findings, observations, and recommendations, and it was presented by the 3-member committee at a brief ceremony at the ministry. Now, members of the committee, remember, Justice of the Court of Appeal, Justice George Kingsley Compson, who was the chairman, Security Analyst Dr. Vladimir Ntridansu, and the Executive Director of Pen Plus Bytes, Juliet Amoa.
Well, we and some other people have some of the recommendations. Daily Guide actually leads with the recommendations.
Yes, Daily Guide says that the 3-member committee which investigated the mayhem that rocked Ejura in the Ejura Dumasi district of the Ashanti region, leading to the killing of 2 people and injuries to 4 others on June 29, submitted its report. Now, according to the paper, snippets from the report indicates that the committee has recommended that the Ejura Dumasi Municipal Chief Executive Mohammed Salisu Bamba should be removed from office. The military officer who led the soldiers to kill the violence has been penciled to face sanctions, as well as the transfer of the district's police commander at Ejura Dumasi, DSP Philip Hammond.
Meanwhile, in that same issue, I expect Ashanti Regional Minister to be sanctioned, not DC. According to the security analyst we spoke to on Eyewitness News, Emmanuel Cotin says he would be disappointed in the outcome of the report of the committee if no action is taken against the Ashanti Regional Minister who requested military involvement in the area in the first place. His comments come after the report. We got portions of the report and the recommendations that you are reading. Now, portions of the report cited by Citi News reveal a recommendation for the removal of the MCE, who actually has said that he's not going to hold himself
he
out
has withdrawn
for...
his
Yes. Now, the committee also recommended compensation for the families of the deceased and injured, transfer of the district police commander for Ejura Dumasi, Philip Hammond, and sanctions for the military officer who led the soldiers on the ground that day, among others. But the analyst says he expects sanctions against the regional minister who admitted to dispatching the soldiers.
All right. Now, speaking of security, the new Crusading Guide is a 3-day workshop underway to educate security personnel. The Ministry of National Security commenced a 3-day workshop yesterday of staff of state security and intelligence agencies to discuss human rights and to educate personnel on national security law and policy, national integrated maritime strategy, border security strategy, and the national security strategy that was recently launched. They're also building capacity of personnel to effectively deliver on their mandates. Participants of the workshop are from National Intelligence Bureau, the Narcotics Control Commission, the National Signals Bureau, Ghana Army, Ghana Revenue Authority, Customs, Immigration Service, and the Ministries of National Security, Justice, and Defense. Now, especially given the negative publicity that the ministry has received in the recent past, this is a very important workshop that is going on, so you can read more about that.
Let me tell you about the updates the Attorney General has been giving to Parliament on some high-profile cases on page 3 of the Daily Graphic. According to the Attorney General, Godfrey Dame, he says that the Criminal Investigation Department of the Ghana Police Service has still not built and presented any docket on the case involving the murder of Ahmed Hussein Swale to his office. Although the CID has been investigating the case since Swale was murdered in January 6, 2019, it is yet to present any docket on the case to the AG. Now, he said that he had also not been briefed on the matter. He said the IGP, however, paid a courtesy call on him on March 29 this year, and being concerned about the failure to resolve that and other homicides, he inquired about the state of investigations into them. Quote, I emphasized to the IGP and his team the need to conclude investigations for action to be taken as soon as practically possible. Now, on the murder of J.B. Dankwa, who was the MP for Ebuakwa North in the Eastern region, he said the trial of the accused was ongoing in the High Court, presided over by Her Ladyship Lydia Osei Mafo. In the case of Professor Bene, Mr. Damis said in the course of investigations, 3 suspects were arrested, with the first suspect, Mr. James Nanawamba, who is believed to have strangled Professor Bene to death, dying while in police custody.
All right, let's come to Koku Anyidoho. His story is everywhere.
Everywhere. All right, the Chronicle has it, the Finder has it as well. And there's also some, rules being put out by the NPP as well. So let's start with Mill's last bastion in NDC decimated. This is page 3 of the Chronicle. The NDC appears to have called the bluff of the former Deputy General Secretary of the party, Mr. Samuel Koku Anyidoho, by expelling him from the party. The dismissal was contained in a letter signed by his former boss, Johnson Esidio Nketia, dated Tuesday, that was yesterday. It comes 5 months after Koku Anyidoho, also known as the Bull, declared or dared the party to sack him. Now, in an interview with OKFM over his suspension, pending a probe into complaints of his misconduct against the party's constitution, Koku Anyidoho claimed that nobody could sack him from the party. But the General Secretary, General Mosquito, in a letter titled Expulsion from the Party for Indiscipline, said that the party met yesterday, the executive, considered the report and recommendations of the National Disciplinary Committee, and they attached the report and said they found him guilty of the said allegations of misconduct and anti-party behavior, and they recommend his outright expulsion from the party.
There's an interesting reaction here that is on Citi Newsroom. Anyidoho seeks solace in Joseph's slave to prime minister story after NDC sacking. Story by Jonas Nyabo says, a former deputy general secretary of the NDC is seeking solace in the word of God after he was sacked from his party or from the party. Reacting to a development on his Twitter account, the politician shared the famous Bible story of Joseph being sold into slavery by his brothers, but later became prime minister in a foreign land, with his brothers later seeking to help from him. He intimated that while the action is to punish him, it will turn out in his favor ultimately. And then the tweet was that when Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, they did not know they were selling him into his God-given destiny to become prime minister in Egypt. What evil men mean for wickedness, God turns it round for good. I am a son of God, he tweeted. Then the general secretary of the party in an interview is also saying that the sacking of Mr. Anyidoho will make the party members happy, because apparently he said that the committee was even under pressure for members to sack him because of his anti-party behavior. Johnson Esidio Nketia, in a Citi News interview, said his expulsion will bring widespread jubilation to party members. According to him, party members, including Koku's constituents, had been clamoring for the decision long ago. Okay. So we'll see how that comes.
Okay.
Should we talk about
But in Koku's own paper, what's his paper saying? We want to know what
Koku's own paper says that Mill's unprecedented economic achievements, 10-member advisory council behind success. So he's explaining the successes of the late President Mill's government, and according to the story on page 3, it was actually a news desk report. He says, contrary to the erroneous claims by Mahama apologists that the unprecedented economic achievements of the late President John Evans Atta Mill's regime was instigated by a 10-member economic advisory council, but not the usual economic management team, which had to be chaired by the vice president. To this end, John Dramani Mahama, who was the vice president at the time, never sat in any of the meetings of the 10-member economic advisory council.
All right.
Then goes on to
let's go to the
details.
CJ story briefly before we come to other stories. So that's also a big story. The presidency has responded to a petition from ASEPA and has set in motion what it calls an action to investigate to find out whether there's any cause for the removal of the CJ. If you can give me that story.
Well, the Herald has a version of it. I'm sure you also find another version online.
So what I have here is simple. It says the Office of the President says some processes have already commenced prior to being petitioned for the possible removal of the CJ, Justice Enini Boa, over his alleged role in a $5 million bribe allegation. The response was contained in a letter to the CSO, Alliance for Social Equity and Public Accountability, which had petitioned the presidency to invoke provisions of Article 146 to commence the impeachment proceedings against the Chief Justice. The group had filed the petition after it wrote to the SRAJ to probe the matter. The presidency's action will therefore be in line with Article 146 of the Constitution.
Yeah, well, the Herald basically has the same version as well.
Yesterday, we were talking about the Education Summit in the UK. Well, the president is heading a Ghanaian delegation to the Global Education Summit in the UK. He left yesterday. His official visit is at the invitation of his Kenyan counterpart, Uhuru Kenyatta, and the Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson. It's a 2-day summit. It will be a key moment for the global community to come together and to support quality education for all children. At the centerpiece of the summit will be the opportunity for leaders to make a 5-year pledge to support Global Partnership for Education's work to help transform education systems in up to 90 countries and territories.
You read a headline about Winneba to the world.
Oh,
and the world coming to Winneba.
And I like the picture on the front
while
page.
The president is going to the UK, West Africa is coming to Winneba.
It's come to Winneba. It's the new publisher, Ifutu MP on show at ECOWAS Parliament. Charlie, see the show.
Yeah,
Charlie,
it's a big match.
All right, so you can go to the new publisher.
So basically, what the West Africa Parliament is meeting.
They are meeting, and the Deputy Majority Leader, as we know, and Member of Parliament for Ifutu, momentarily became an ambassador of Ghana's rich culture and tradition during the opening ceremony of the delocalized meeting of the Parliament of ECOWAS, ongoing in Winneba, the capital town of his constituency.
Okay.
Dressed in traditional kente.
Of course.
He thrilled his colleague parliamentarians to several performances of various traditional Ghanaian music and dance and drumming during the ceremony. At a point, he even took over the drums. Hey, Charlie! He drummed, he sang, he danced, and he told his guests of the rich traditions and culture of the Ifutu people. This is beautiful, actually. It's done very, very well. Now, Ghana's Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, officially opened the meeting. He expressed gratitude for being invited to the gathering. He said it will be held under two themes, telecommunication and regional security. That's what they're discussing.
Yeah. There's another story that says they are asking for more affordable internet. That's one of the things that came out of that. So beyond their drumming and dancing, there are some key, very serious things happening there as well.
Well, there's also hunger on the horizon. If you go to the back page of the Daily Graphic, World Food Program warns of hunger in West and Central Africa. The World Food Program says millions of families in the West and Central African region are going hungry this year as food prices soar. More than 31 million people in West and Central Africa region are expected to be food insecure and unable to feed themselves during this June to August, the lean season, the period when food is scarce before the next harvest. It said, according to the CADA Harmonize, a joint food security analysis, the number was more than 30% higher than last year and was the highest level in a decade, stating that factors that had contributed to the situation included conflict, hunger, high food prices, and reduced income as a result of COVID-19 on trade, tourism, informal activity, and remittances.
I wanted to give you a story from Cote d'Ivoire. Happy to see you. Ivory Coast political rivals hug in reconciliation push. There's a Citi newsroom story. It says Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara and longtime rival Laurent Gbagbo hugged or embraced on Tuesday at their first meeting in over a decade as part of efforts to ease political tension in the West African country, which is our neighbor here. I'm happy to see you, Ouattara said as he welcomed the former president at the presidential palace in Abidjan, the economic capital of the cocoa-producing country. Now, we know the history. For more than a decade, faced political tension, mistrust, and violence. A 2010-2011 civil war killed 3,000 people as the two men struggled for power. Gbagbo is now 76, refused to concede after the election defeat to Ouattara December 2010 and was arrested following the war. He returned from exile in June after being acquitted by the International Criminal Court on war crimes. So Gbagbo said he had urged Ouattara to continue reconciliation efforts by freeing other prisoners from the civil war period. We'll keep an eye on this story sourced from Reuters.
Now, in Ghanaian Times, we talk a lot about municipalities and districts and contractors and matters arising. Well, 50 districts paid 810,000 Ghana cedis to contractors for projects not executed.
What?
This is a report from the Auditor General. So a performance audit of 50 selected districts across the country has found that about 810,000 Ghana cedis was paid to various contractors for projects not executed between 2013 and 2018. In many instances, contractual agreements and items captured under bill of quantities as part of the execution of contracts were not followed through. Either the quantities stated in the BOQ were reduced or inferior materials were used in place of specified ones, but no adjustments of price were made. This came to light at a national forum on institutionalizing decentralized performance audits to ensure efficient utilization of state resources.
Well, let me take you abroad quickly. And on page 1 of the Daily Graphic, Africa Institute's COVID-19 travel document. The African Union's COVID-19 passport can set in place a mechanism for controlling future pandemics and disease outbreaks on the continent. Now launched in October 2020 by the African Union Secretariat and the Africa CDC, the passport program that the Trusted Travel supports member states in verification of COVID-19 test certificates and harmonization of entry and exit screening. Now, if you go to Niger as well, gunmen on motorbikes have raided a village and killed 14 people.
Henry Quarter demands transfer of Ayawaso Central Municipal Environmental Health Officer. It's also a story on myjoyonline.com, and this is a story that Daily Guide also captures and says Henry Quarter descends on his own constituency, removing unauthorized structures and clearing the place of filth. Let's look at the editorials quickly.
All right, the Finder resolves school feeding challenges. The Ghana National School Feeding Program is struggling, and they say those issues should be resolved. But the Gender and Social Protection Minister says she is going to resolve that. So let's see what happens.
The BNFT says SOEs need bitter sanction. They are not happy at all with the way the SOEs are flouting the law. Meanwhile, tax e-commerce now or taxing e-commerce now could prove counterproductive. It's another of the editorials of the BNFT.
The Herald goes with rising food prices. Has planting for food and jobs failed?
Okay.
That is what. And then the Graphic goes with sustaining momentum of Clean Ghana campaign.
The New Publisher, something small for your boys, sir. Talking about driving and sometimes what you meet on the road when you're trying to get from point A to point B. The Chronicle, non-performing MMDCEs must be shown the red card. That's the editorial. And the Times, public interest paramount in handling Ejura probe report.
Thank you very much, Kukui. Thank you very much, Godfred. Coming up next is the Citi Business